Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Finance and Public Service Overview and Scrutiny Panel. I think looking around here tonight, everybody that's present is a regular at the council, so I won't go through the evacuation procedure. I think we're okay with that. Moving on to apologies. I have apologies from Councillor Kenner. I don't have any more apologies. Okay. Moving on to item 3, the minutes of the previous meeting. So everybody had a chance to read the minutes, and that being the case, happy to take a proposal for me to sign the minutes. Councillor Clark, thank you. Councillor Downs, seconding. Thank you very much. In which case, I will sign the minutes. Okay. Thank you. Item 4, declarations of interest. Does anybody have any declarations of interest to make that are not in the published schedule? Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 5. Have Mr. Smith registered to speak on items 8 and 9. Mr. Smith, you can either speak on the items now if you'd prefer to, or I can wait till the item comes along and let you speak at the beginning of that agenda item. How would you like to proceed? Right, so do you intend to speak at the start of each item or now in total? Would you like to speak on both items now, or would you like to speak on them as they appear in the agenda? Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 6 then, we have questions to Cabinet. I notice we've got both members of the Cabinet relevant to this this meeting, Councillor Croft and Councillor Markham, are present. So over to the floor if anybody's got questions for the Cabinet members. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one, if it's probably to the portfolio holder, in relation to the level of complaints and the dropping of the numbers of complaints, or not the number of dropping in complaints, but at the response times. Perhaps the portfolio holder could give us an update on what we've done to achieve that, the dropping of the number of complaints, or the drop of the dealing with complaints is probably the better way of putting it, I suppose, Chair.
Councillor Croft, would you like to take that?
Right, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I can't give them the figure off the top of my head, I'm afraid, but we have made substantial improvements in terms of complaint response time, and particularly items like FOIA response times, because we were well outside of the statutory limit when we started 18 months ago. We've improved the process largely because we've allocated a dedicated member of staff, a dedicated resource to it, who actually is able to manage it through the process. We've taken items like member complaints and we've actually formalised it, so we don't have members running around all over the authority. I'm trying to find a better word than hassling officers. We've taken it through a proper triage process where we can audit it, we can check the progress of the complaints as they arise, where they are in the system, and we've started a much more robust system of internal challenge to the departments around the business, because it's all very well putting complaints through customer services, but if our colleagues across the council aren't responding to them, they're not going to get very far, other than thank you very much for your letter response. There is still a way to go in terms of things like the time required to answer phones. It's going the wrong way, but we are pushing to get those KPIs up. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. I just thought it was worth noting that the number of complaints have come down in relation to the the waiting times for responses. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Watkins.
Yeah, thank you. On that, the member complaints, or whatever you would like to call it, inquiries, the member inquiries, there's not a way of following it up. So if you make an inquiry or complaint, you do get a number, but there's no way. I've got a number of inquiries that I've put through that haven't been dealt with yet, and and I've brought this up numerous times. So there's no way of the customer services team or anybody flagging it, so that a month later or so, they know they need to follow it up. I've also brought up on a number of occasions about the form that has to be filled in, where you have to know the postcode and the address of people. I get a lot of people complain to me, but they don't give me their postcode or something, so I have to spend time on trying to find people's postcodes. So I have asked for these things to be looked at, but they're still not being dealt with yet. Can you give me an answer on that, please?
So on your, sorry, it sounds like you're feeling better anyway. On your second point, we do need to know people's addresses, because they've got to check where they are in the borough. We've got to check them against record keeping. I think that's legitimate. On the first point, that sounds like I know we're working on the technical side of the form, so if you want to send me the actual complaint numbers you're referring to, I'll pick that up with the customer service guys, because it's an ongoing process of continuous improvement, and we're trying to get it right, so it makes your life easier, our life easier, and the residents' lives a lot easier.
Any other points for the Cabinet members? I would just like to add on the complaints thing. I was reassured to find out recently that we do now evaluate each complaint to find out whether the point that was made was justifiable or not. Because clearly some people contact us with things that may not actually relate to something that we're responsible for. And whilst we may count it as a complaint, it might not relate to something that is justifiable to complain to us about. So it's good to see that we are analysing that type of thing. If there are no further questions for Cabinet members, thank you very much for attending tonight, and you don't need to stay for the rest of the meeting unless you wish to do so. Thank you. Okay. Moving on to item number 7, the recycling facility update, which, as members will be aware, we in a joint partnership programme to develop a new facility in Coventry. The update was presented earlier and is part of the agenda, but we have some drone footage to show of the facility itself. So over to you, please. Bear with us while we'll get the tech right on this. Thank you. I hope you all found that interesting, at least. For anybody that's been to see this site, it is truly monumental in scale and size. And again, anybody that's been will see how much progress has been made, perhaps since their last visit. So if members or people wish to go and see this, if you let Victoria know, we're going to try and arrange more visits, I believe. And so you can just appreciate for yourself the size of this undertaking that will put us at the forefront of recycling, nationally, really, when this all comes through. We have Director Hollis available online if there are any questions from members about this. So anybody got any questions? Okay, I've got Councillor Wright first. Then were you indicating Councillor Clark? Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Do we have a provisional date for the changeover to curbside collections and mixed recycling? Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear.
Thank you, Chair. We're currently working through that, and there'll be a future Cabinet report coming on the commingle. In terms of the site itself, Chair, they're looking at a sort of soft market from July time with a full operational September, October. There are a few more things still complete on site, but that's the predicted time at this time. So looking full operational delivery September, October. But obviously, I'm not going to guarantee that, but that's the times that we're looking at for the MRF site to be on operational. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Director Hollis. Any more? Councillor Clark, you indicate to speak.
Mr. Hollis just answered my question. Thank you.
Mrs. Ross.
Looking at the miles and miles of solar panels, are you likely to sell that electricity back to the grid, use it for the community of Coventry, for example?
Chair, I think with the amount of equipment and electrical use inside that MRF, the solar panels will be to support that and charge the batteries. I'm not aware that the organisation that the 8 partners are working with, Sherborne, will be doing that, but that's a question that can go back and probably one we ask Chair Damon and the sort of the next site visit to get some further details. But I know they've really, as you can see from the footage, really put a number of solar panels on there to support the sort of environment and green footprint for the site. But I think in terms of the electronic mechanical wear and the optics that will be inside the facility, they will probably need all that plus more to be able to generate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe when we did the visit, they did say that some additional power was coming from the existing recycling site, which is next door, isn't it?
That's correct, Chair. They'd had to put in additional electrical works. If I recall, Chair, when we were there was quite a substantial amount in terms of building that into the grid. So that's why I'm hesitant. I think they'll be using the solar panels and more in order to operate. But as I say, I haven't got that finer detail, but that's something we can perhaps pick up moving forward, Chair.
Any additional questions on this one? In which case, thank you very much. We'll make a note of the questions and the points, and we can now move on to agenda item 8, which is the procurement and accounts payable strategy. If you'd like to give us the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Evening, members. So the purpose of this report is just to present to the committee the proposed procurement and accounts payable strategy for the period 2023 to 2027. Hopefully with an effective date from April 2023, so we're aligned with the financial year period. So just to give you a bit of context, so as per item 3.1 of the report, The current strategy has been in place since 2017, and I'm sure all members are aware of the economic climate we've faced over the last 5 years with Brexit, COVID, the war in Ukraine, and obviously the current rate of inflation. So as part of those changes we've had in the last 5 years, and alongside that, we are, as members may be aware, going through a transition as a result of Brexit to implement our own, or the UK's, procurement legislation. So historically we've had the EU legislation, but because of Brexit we're going through a process of updating that to have UK procurement legislation. That is currently going through the House of Lords and the House of Commons with a view of getting royal assent later this year. So another reason for this strategy is to ensure that as a council we are prepared and ready for the new legislation to come into place. If I can, Chair, I'll just quickly run through excuse me, some of the main changes compared to the previous one to this proposed strategy. So in terms of the strategy presented tonight, it has been reorganised to make it flow a little bit easier and easier to read and understand. We've also updated the procurement vision, noting what I've said earlier about the economic situation and climate we've faced over the last 5 years. And two things I do want to raise at that point is that we have now included provision for the accounts payable element of the service that we offer and deliver, but also a wider SME offering, so that in our bigger contracts we can help encourage contractors to use SMEs within their supply chain, and where possible local regional suppliers as well, to keep that economic growth local. Furthermore, we've also updated the compliance perspective, as I said earlier, about the procurement legislation coming into place, just making sure we note that and are ready for it. And also additional outcomes that we've built in there under the value for money, collaboration and the social value offering. So in terms of the report itself, Chair, it's just as per recommendations in section 5 of the report for the members to note the report, to either accept the report as written, or we can have a discussion and see if there's any amendments you wish to make to the proposed report tonight. And then subject to the outcome, Chair, we'd look to take it to Cabinet for full adoption. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Matt. We do have a speaker on this, as you're quite right. Mr. Smith, you wish to speak, sir?
Right. Given that the government local housing allowance rates for a single room with shared facilities is £112.77 a week, £5,864 a year. How does this council justify paying £67 a day and up to £24,388 a year to NABCEL for that very service? I can't see how anyone would justify that. Ridiculous. This finance department, so much is in secret. There's no value for money. That's just proof of it there. What on earth are we paying NABCEL that for? I don't know. Obviously, not for the better of the taxpayers. You got another secret meeting to deal with the bridge debacle and the cost that's going to put on us.
Mr. Smith, if I might just
it's
stop.
A very wordy thing, putting down what you should do.
If I might just stop you
but
there,
none of it's happening.
We're now discussing the revised procurement and accounts payable strategy.
Yeah.
We're not talking about.
It's a very wordy document,
we're not
but it's not happening.
Projects
none
that
of
the
it's
council's
happening.
got underway. So can you please stick to the agenda point, please?
That's the agenda. None of the wording in that. There's no. He says value for money. Where's the value for money in that? We get very little value for money information in these reports, yeah? When we try and find out anything, it's all in secret. I was here last night, Tuesday night, like I say, behind closed doors. The same with the bridge debacle, behind closed doors.
Mr. Smith, if I might just stop you again. What you're talking about here has got nothing to do with the item that's in front of us on the agenda.
It should be a criminal investigation.
If you could please stick to the agenda.
There should be a criminal investigation into this council and its financial dealings. Unfortunately, because of the tangled web we weave between here and the law department in this borough, yeah, We're not going to get it. It has been reported to the
Mr.
police.
Smith, I'm calling a halt to this now. You're not sticking to the agenda point. I'm moving on.
Crooks.
Opening it up to any questions or points from members. Thank you. Councillor Watkins.
Yeah, Matt, thank you for your report. I know you mentioned slightly on the small SMEs. Is there going to be anything else put in there to make it greener, if you like, the greener footprint, so that to make the local connection a little bit stronger, or is it as you've just explained?
Thanks, Chair. So in terms of the social value theme, which I think is theme 5 in the report, Councillor, that is looking to, I think it does mention actually reducing waste and where possible, trying to be more green and eco-friendly. We do have to obviously balance that with the cost, but also in balancing that with quality as well, and making sure that we are getting the right contractual supply arrangement in place to deliver what we're trying to get at the end of the day and the requirements we're delivering, given the budget constraints we have as well. But as we say, where possible, trying to encourage recycling, reuse, and where possible, making better use of energy efficiency. And I know as well some of our bigger projects for our housing developments, they are looking at more energy efficient measures, whether that's potentially solar panels, BREEAM assessments, so on and so forth. So it is dependent on the requirement and the particular project, but we do try and encourage that throughout the supply chain. Hope that's answered your question.
Yeah. Also, with the SMEs in mind, will it be easier for them the local people to be able to access our web? Because in the past, I've been contacted by quite a few local businesses that would like to work for our council, but have found it very difficult to. I know I've contacted you before, so if that could be made easier for local people to access what's available, I think that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, just on the back of that, so the new regulations themselves are aimed at trying to reduce barriers for SMEs and businesses. So that's one thing the government's trying to do to shape the way procurement is done going forward. We are actually going through a process of updating our website pages as well to help offer more support. And unfortunately, because of COVID, we were unable to do a Meet the Buyer event. Obviously, being face-to-face is always better than being virtually, but we are planning to try and do another event in November this year, following one that we did previously just before COVID, and that was really well received, really well attended. So we will be looking to try and host another one, working with Abu and his team in the economic development team to look at that going forward. So yes, we are trying where possible to reduce barriers and make it easier for our local SMEs. And just if I can, Chair, as well, just some data on that. So we report quarterly on our KPIs, and in Nuneaton and Bedworth, if we look at our spend with our suppliers, over 90% of it is with SMEs. So I think that's a real good statistic as the council to show that we are trying to support our local SMEs within the borough where we can. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Further point, Councillor Watkins?
This is just for something that you might want to take away. On that last point that Matt's just mentioned, I think that's something that we need to publicise and get on our comms get onto our comms to put out there that we are doing that, and 90%, I think that's pretty good.
Thank you, Councillor Watkins. Any further points on this? Anybody wish to speak on it? Okay, but on that basis then, we have a recommendation in front of us which is at paragraph 5 of the report. I'm happy to take that en bloc. Everybody happy with that? Beg your pardon, I'll just... I'm just moving the, I'm asking for, I'm moving the recommendation in the report. So, seconded Councillor Clark. Is everybody happy to support that? Show of hands on that, please, so we can see it.
So just for clarification, Chair, moving the agreement to the report, yes.
Correct.
Thank you, Chair. I'll agree to.
Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. In which case, we can now move on. Thank you for attending. You don't need to stay for the entirety of the meeting unless you have other things to contribute. So we can move on to item 9, which is the integrated performance report for the second quarter.
In relation to the second quarter summary for 2022-23, the Appendix A, performance linked to finance, shows that 2 have improved, 3 have declined, and 1 has stayed the same. One of those also has no trend, so that equates to those. The 3 decline measures are processing of new benefits claims, processing of change of circumstances benefit claims, and the percentage of waste recycled and composted. In relation to Appendix B, the Strategic Risk Register, as at the end of the second quarter, of the 11 risks within the remit of this panel, the breakdown according to net risk is non-red, 4 are net amber, and 7 are net green. And just to run through the main changes that have occurred on the document this time within the remit of the panel, R7, a breakdown of council services. A target date has been added to a planned action regarding replacing IT server rooms in council buildings, and the introduction of a business continuity planning policy has been moved from planned to existing mitigations. R10, effectively managing the council's finances. A planned action has been added relating to the review of reserves for 2023-24, and financial training for elected members has been moved to planned mitigations. R11, NABCEL unplanned liabilities. A planned action has been added regarding a review of the growth model and establishment of a financial plan. R15, capital investment priorities. A planned action has been added relating to the review of the medium-term financial plan. R16, cyber security. A planned action has been added regarding public services network annual compliance certification being in place by December 2022. And R22, failure to deliver the sub-regional recycling facility. An existing mitigation has been added relating to site visits by Cabinet and Scrutiny members to monitor progress. As regards Appendix C, which is the Strategic Performance Report Executive Summary, at the end of the second quarter, of the 19 measures, 10 are green, 2 are amber, and 7 are red. The amber and red measures, which are shown under areas for improvement, are general fund revenue, housing revenue, rent collection, processing of new benefits claims, working days lost to short-term sickness absence, working days lost to long-term sickness absence, short-term sickness return to work interview compliance within 3 days, agency staff spend, and the corporate plan Building a Better Borough monitoring. Appendix D, the Freedom of Information and Environmental Request Summary, shows that 345 were received, 336 completed, and 78 were late, that is over 20 days. 9 were outstanding. On the last round of scrutiny panels, a request was made regarding how many of the requests receive a holding letter. Well, the protocol is that all get an automated acknowledgement if they're emailed. And to put that into context, at the end of October 2022, 400 of 402 inquiries were received via email. And finally, Appendix E, the complaints summary, shows that 534 were received, 533 were completed, 1 was outstanding, and 128 were late, which was over 10 days. And that completes the summary, Chair.
Thank you, Steve. Mr. Smith, do you wish to speak on this item?
Once again, I'll thank Mr. Gore for his efforts. Obviously, like I say, another wordy piece with Mr. Gore obviously not having most of the information on this failing council. You're failing on most of your directives, making this place making the town a better place to live in. You've destroyed the Nuneaton with the plans to destroy Bedworth. What else is it? You allow the Severn Trent to dump sewage into the rivers. The rollout of 5G without considering any health concerns.
Mr. Smith,
Traffic
can
congestion.
you stick to the agenda item,
That
please?
basically, you're making claims in these reports, yeah, that you lot are doing something, but you're achieving nothing. How can Mr. Gore do a report, yeah, with your works of fiction? It's nonsense. All of it. You're failing in every department. If he's going to have all the information, how can he make a report on whether you've upholding the health side of it, yeah? When Severn Trent are dumping stuff in the rivers, yeah? Where's that in the report? You're making claims that you are doing things which you are not doing, yeah? You're making demands on the people of this borough, yeah? Which I think they're going to refuse come April.
Mr. Smith, being very lenient here, but you're not sticking to the agenda
Leave
item.
me.
This is a report on
It's a report,
something
yeah,
from the council.
on
It's nothing
work
to do
of
with
fiction.
Severn Trent.
How can Mr. Gore prepare a report with the information given by you lot? Anybody in this borough, if you got out your little bubble and sat in the town for the day, would tell you are failing on all these. Yeah? You sitting in here saying you are.
Mr. Smith, I'm going to call a stop to that now. Shall we move on to the item?
It was just a clarification as to where the information for the reports has come from, Chair. Perhaps the office can give some information, some detail as to where the information that was in the reports before us has come from, please.
Steve, would you like to give clarification on where the information has come from?
Yeah, the reports are come from the various sections. So there are 5 elements to the report. One is finance linked to performance. Then there's a strategic risk register. Then there's the executive summary, which is all information collected for management team on a monthly and quarterly basis, which is reported to Cabinet. The other 2 elements, freedom of information and environmental requests and complaints, are received from the customer services department. So, my role is to pull all that information together. But all I can say is, in relation to the gentleman's question, is that a data quality audit is carried out annually, which I carry out by sampling performance that is reported to management team, scrutiny panels, Cabinet.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for that clarification, especially the clarification regarding the accuracy and the validation of the data that we use to prepare the reports. Thank you. Any further comments from members or Councillor Wright?
Bearing in mind the disappointing decline in recycling rates and the distinctly unambitious target of 34%, presumably once the MRF facility is in use, the proportion of recycled waste will improve significantly. Do we have any targets available?
I think we can make a note of the question for you, Councillor Wright, but given this is a report looking back at the previous quarter rather than the future, and the fact that the recycling system will be vastly simplified under the new recycling facility, I think we can all hope that we will see a massive uplift in recycling rates. But we can make a note of the question, refer it to the relevant officer and get an answer to you. Any further points or questions on this one? Councillor Watkins.
Yeah, Chair. We usually go through the ones that are with the sad faces. And on page 41, you'll see that 32 grand increased fuel prices and 43,000 external vehicle hire costs. I was wondering if Steve or anybody could shed some light on what the external vehicle hires were. Thank you, Chair.
Steve, are you able to give an answer on that, or is this something that perhaps would be better dealt with as a question prior to the meeting or as a separate answer now?
I'm not in a position to answer specific questions on performances. My role is generally just to pull all information together. There are certain areas that I do know, but that isn't one of them.
I would remind members that we all get a copy of the report in advance, and we're asked to submit questions in advance so that the data holders can answer in advance of the meeting. But we will make a note of that one, Councillor Watkins, make sure you get an answer for it. Anybody else? Okay. So if there are no further points on that one, the recommendation is at item 4. And that is that we basically make any recommendations to the relevant Cabinet portfolio holders, which we've done. So I think we can now steadily move on to item number 10, which is the revised overview and scrutiny guide. Have a presentation on this one?
I revised it. I can show you it's a full revision of the OSP guide. You're asked to
Again, this is a report that's been circulated in advance. Has any member got any points that they wish to make about this report?
Was there a member of the public wanted to speak on this point? No, sorry.
In which case, if there are no questions on this one, we can approve. I can move that we approve the guide. Does that find a seconder? Councillor Harbison, thank you. All those in favour? Anybody against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Item 11 is the forward plan, which is for noting. Does anybody have any observations about the forward plan? Any items you wish to bring forward? Councillor Watkins.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to bring the Church Road temporary accommodation to the next. No, I've tried to take it under housing and environment and I've got absolutely nowhere. But this one is to look at the budget of it, where we are on what the actual budget of refurbing it was, and where we are with the budget, and where we are with completion against when we was promised it would be completed. So it's totally different to what has gone to housing and communities. This is a scrutiny panel and we need to scrutinise any budgets, and we already know that this one is running over budget, so we need to know where it is and how much longer it will be. Thank you.
Councillor Watkins, there was quite a lot in that, so I just want to clarify which particular project is it you wish to look at?
So it's the refurbishment costs of the temporary accommodation in Church Road.
Thank you. And are you going to put something in writing to us about this so we know exactly what it is that you want to look at? I'm quite happy to look at it. I just think we need some certainty for members about what we're looking at, and we can certainly put it on as a work programme request, and we can look at that.
Chair, I can do. All I'd do is I'll resubmit the ones that I have done twice before. It's exactly the same. To look at the budget that is set aside to refurbish the temporary accommodation in Church Road against what was budgeted to do.
Happy to take that on board if you send it to me, and we'll get it on as an item for consideration. Thank you. Anybody else on this particular item? Item 12, the work programme. Happy with that? Yep. I've had no notification of any other business. Well, yeah, let's have a look. Right, we have, thank you for that, a briefing note on allotment action plans, freedom of information and complaints, and welfare reform. So, questions to be sent to committee services by the end of Monday the 30th of January. And written responses will be provided. Moving on to item 14, which is exclusion of the press and public. It's recommended that under section 100A brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, public and press be excluded from the meeting during consideration of the following item, it being likely that there would be disclosure of exempt information of the description specified in paragraphs 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A to the said Act. I'll move that. Does it find a seconder? Councillor Harbison. Anybody in favour? Please show. Against? Abstentions? No. Thank you. Okay, I'll give some time for members of the public